Okay, so looks like I timed my stream yesterday poorly because literally right after I did it, a bunch of polls dropped. So we're gonna have to talk about those now. This is what I wanted to talk about in that little stream, but didn't get a chance to. I haven't really been able to dig too deep into the crosstabs, and there's folks that are doing that right now. It's good work, and we'll sort of tease more out as things going along. Friendly reminder, if you appreciate this channel, please consider subscribing for $3 to $5 a month on Patreon, or you can subscribe on Substack. Helps support the channel, helps keep things going. Really important, because I want to keep doing this for you guys. Now that I've got that out of the way, we are going to get into some of this polling data. First off, we are going to start with the St. Anselm stuff, mainly because this covers CD1. I can get into more detail on the things like governor, and I can get into more detail on things like Senate, because it's relevant. But as I had said yesterday, the thing that is really important to keep an eye on when it comes to just these races is that because CD1 is open, and I mean, I understand that Senate is open too, but there's a little bit less contention there. There's a little bit less competitiveness. And I think the CD1 race is very much so, it's an easier swing than trying to compete against somebody like Chris Pappas, who has, whether we like it or not, has a lot of name recognition. Yeah, so I mean, not that there isn't name recognition in CD1, but it's a little bit fuzzier because there's not the record to go with it. And so I'm just going to pop over right now and we're going to talk about it. So here we go. This is the St. A's results for CD1. The first thing that I want everybody to pay attention to, right? Like, I know it's easy to look at the right side of this circle and focus on the names. The most important thing, though, is not the right side of the circle. The most important thing is the left side of the circle. And that's the 47% unsure. That's an insane number. That is an insane number to have be not really clear on who they support yet. Because these are registered voters. These are people that ostensibly do plan on voting in the primary election, right? So these are gettable votes. And that's a massive number. That swings everybody, everything, right? That is a total unknown. So that's probably what I would say is where the true attention needs to be paid in terms of getting the votes, right? If you're a candidate running in this race, that's the number you want to be paying attention to. I know that it's like the impulse is going to be like, well, how do we yank points off of competitors? And that's not necessarily the best strategy, right? If we just step back for a second, you're way more likely to be able to sell somebody that's unsure about something on a candidate than you are to be able to dissuade somebody who's already committed a certain amount of support for a candidate, right? With that said, let's get into these numbers, okay? Chudzinski is at 1%, right? That's, I'm sorry, all due respect, that's a dead campaign. That is a dead campaign. This far out, if you're polling at 1%, you're not pulling that. You're simply not going to pull the numbers that you need to pull in order to actually get to where you need to go. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic, right? I get that might hurt for Sarah Chudzinski. That might be sort of painful to accept, but it's just true. And I actually do think that the same sentiment very much so applies to Baryon and Arusha, right? For anybody that's like sinking into those candidates, you are clutching onto something that's not possible. It's just not realistic right now. You've got until September 8th, right? It is July 1st right now. I'm recording this on July 1st. You've got 2 months. Like just a touch over 2 months. If you really think that you are going to go from 1 or 3% up to those numbers, especially in the case of, say, somebody like Baryon, who's refusing to engage with social media, who's refusing to engage with digital spaces. Again, this isn't like, people are going to get really upset when they hear this, because they'll take it really personally, right? If you're like a staffer and you're watching this is going to feel like I'm digging at you, and that's not really how it is. It's just about saying that like, we got to be realistic, folks. This isn't something that you can just will away or hope out of existence. This is very real, and it's very much so worth noting that St. A's is going to lean conservative, right? St. A's is going to lead you more towards a corporatist or a centrist aligned position. So if the polls look like this, and you're already you're getting these numbers out of what would ostensibly be a favorable audience for a more center-tacked candidate, this is fucking bad news for you. This is really fucking bad news for you. And to that end, I actually just think at that point, like, just consolidate. Just consolidate your points towards a candidate that's actually going to be able to achieve what you need to achieve. I don't know what else to say, and I'm sorry. That's painful, right? But at this point, the focus is on winning, and about if you're truly a progressive candidate, then if you want your policies to win, you need to back the candidate that's going to be able to materialize that best for you. And frankly, if you look at the numbers, if you were to take the percentage points consumed by Chudzinski, Arusha, and Baryon, and you were to put them into Heath Howard, he would be outpacing Maura Sullivan right now. So in a sense, the spread of progressives in contention for that space, again, we're having a conversation now where we disregard the 47%, and I'm simply doing this as an exercise to demonstrate, okay, the way that the vote splitting works. If those campaigns were willing to set aside their egos and actually consolidate behind the most viable progressive candidate, Heath Howard would be beating out Maura Sullivan, and he would be 6 points away from touching Stephanie Shaheen. When you have 47 points available to pull from, that puts Heath Howard in contention. It just does. Especially when he's actually capable of appealing to the people that are very frustrated with the establishment. He's able to pull independent voters. He's able to even pull some Republicans into his coalition. That's really meaningful. Okay? When you get to the general election, when you get to everybody's receiving the same ballot either way, and it's not split up on your party affiliation, that means a lot, because then you're talking about split ticket voters, right? You're talking about people that will want to buck the system because they don't like their other options, like DiLorenzo, Novoletsky. Okay, that's real shit. That matters. Now, I don't really expect either of those three candidates, Chudzinski, Arusha, or Baryon, I don't actually expect them to leave the race, because I think they believe they can win, right? And I don't even think that you're going to be able to convert the entire percentage points over to Heath Howard. I don't think that's possible. I would like it to be possible because I would like to see a genuine progressive actually be able to contend here. But I don't think that's possible, right? But in this sense, you're not talking about convincing a campaign to do something. You're convincing a voter to do something, right? So this is where organizing comes in. The organizers, the people that are advocating for it. If you're a voter and you've got a neighbor, right? And they've put an Arusha sign or a Bariant sign or a Chudzinski sign outside of their house. What I want you to do is I want you to go over to your neighbor's house and I want you to knock on that door and have a nice, chill conversation with them. Talk to them about what they believe. Talk to them about what they want to see. Talk to them about what's realistic. Be sober. Be calculated. Be strategic. Think about this as a way to win. Don't think about it as voting with what feels right. Think about it as voting with what you know is right. There's a really big difference between those things. At the same time, there needs to be a serious in-person or phone banking effort. Because me sitting here talking about this shit on the internet, look, like my videos, they don't get enough plays to really like contend with the public. Okay. I mean, it's just a reality. I know who I am and where I sit and what my place is. I understand that. But I do understand that there's a significant portion of people that exist within the political bubble that will watch this. Or at the very least be aware of what I said, even if they didn't watch it. Somebody near them will watch it and they will hear this and they will have to, they will be sharing that. They'll be acknowledging that there's a creator on the internet that's saying something about this. That's not nothing, but it's not a lot of impact, right? So the strategy is to, if you're a constituent and you care about your candidate, you need to set aside your passion for that candidate, right? You need to sort of take that and put it in a separate bucket for a minute and just think about cold, hard realities in the ability to make an argument for that candidate's ability to win, right? If you're talking about Maura Sullivan or you're talking about Stephanie Shaheen, right? And then you compare that to the 47% unsure, those are people that are questioning the motives and orientations of those two candidates. That matters. That's really, really key. Okay? Because those voters, that undecided nature means that there's a certain amount of doubt placed on Shaheen or Sullivan. They don't like the carpetbagger. They don't like the dynasty politics. But they don't really know anything about their other options yet. And it's your duty to inform them of their other options. And I think if that's the case, and you've got Heath Howard sitting there at 9%, he's almost cracked into double digits. Again, with the most conservative poll. And I'm willing to bet that if we saw polling come out from UNH on CD1, they haven't released that yet. And I think we're all still kind of like, hey guys, where are you at? I do genuinely believe that if we saw that data come out, which does lean more progressive, we would see better numbers for Heath Howard. That's just a projection. That's just on my part. I'm just spitting in the wind. Okay, so I could be wrong about that, and I fully admit that. But likelihood implies. So that's definitely something to be heavily, heavily considered as we walk into this. So what we're talking about is we're talking about organizing strategy, right? DSA throughout the country right now has proven that the best method to converting voters is in-person and phone banking. Social media posts, that's not going to convince anybody. News clips, that's not going to convince anybody. Me sitting on here doing YouTube stuff, that's not going to convince anybody. I know that I'm already talking to people that are already engaged. Who I'm talking to is the people that are most likely to go out and do the phone banking or do the door knocking. And so this is my appeal to you to really drill down, do volunteering, put in some time. Okay. I've heard rumors that there might be some serious backup coming in for Heath Howard. I can't make promises on that because I'm not certain. I don't know what the future tells, but I know that there are things in the works. things that will make a huge difference, things that will make this race much more visible on a national scale. And we'll have to see how that plays out if that's really the case. But I do want people to understand that there is very much so a real chance that that cavalry will come. And when that cavalry comes, Keith Howard is going to be the one that benefits from it the most. That's just where we're at right now. Okay. So, yes, I do think there's sort of value in trying to maybe convince some of the voters that support Bariant or Chudzinski or Arusha to move away from those candidates. Again, no shade to them. It's not like I think they're bad people or anything like that. This is politics. This is not personal. This is about winning. This is about not allowing more dynasty or carpetbagger out-of-state politics to dictate what happens. This is about keeping New Hampshire, New Hampshire, and actually respecting who we are and where we come from. So that is what I would like to see on the organization side of things. And make no bones about it, the moment I have some spare time, I will be trying to do volunteering for that phone banking. If there's doors that I can knock, I will do it, but I don't live in CD1. So I can't do that. That's just a reality for me. Anyways, that's my opinion on it. Okay? This is the time to organize. This is the time to be very, very real. This is the time to think about winning. This is not the time for your personal feelings, right? And I do think personally that the backing that came from New Hampshire Youth Movement, 350 NH, and the House Progressive Caucus for Christian Arusha, I think that was a really bad move. I'm not trying to impugn those organizations, but the reality for me is that to back that candidate at that particular time, that lacked the political foresight, the strategic planning to understand where the constituency is at and to read the temperature of the nation and of the state at this particular moment. It's very much so tied up in the interpersonal connections that exist within the Concord bubble. And that's not where the state is. That's not where people are at. And that does certainly mean that we, within the state, as all of this national stuff moves away, it's worth us really examining what these organizations are doing and holding them to maintain a certain responsibility so they don't just become the progressive labeled version of the New Hampshire Democratic Party. Because we all know how well the New Hampshire Democratic Party has done in the past decade or so. It's just a fucking string of losses. I don't think we need more of that. That's my 2 cents. I'm just a guy on the internet saying things. You guys are the ones that have to decide what you're going to do with this take. Whether you believe me or not, whether you think my analysis is valid or salient. You decide. Not up to me. Okay, moving on. I'm not going to get into this. I'm not getting into CD2. Because I don't want to. I have to let it happen. I've said repeatedly that I support Paige Boschman. 110%. Totally back her. I want the shift to happen. But you've got 15% unsure right there. 15%. That only puts her at 24% to Goodlander's 76 if she were to eat that entire 15% unsure. That's not a win. You have to eat into the Goodlanders' support. And she did make a vote recently that was on the right side of an issue where Pappas was on the wrong side. Look, I don't support Maggie Goodlander, and if anybody's fucking curious about that, they can go see me talk about how I balked at an interview that she did with New Hampshire Has Issues. And that's not to impugn New Hampshire Has Issues, but I did not enjoy that discussion from an analytical standpoint, because I thought it was very, very two-dimensional, and ignorant to historical context and the actual position of the people of New Hampshire and of the nation. I think Maggie Goodlander is kind of stuck in time. I think her notion really exists of an understanding of a period where we still had John McCain, a guy she worked for and with. We don't live in that America anymore, and we're not getting it back. It's never coming back. But I don't know what to do with that. I wish Paige nothing but the best. And I will stand 10 toes down for her, and I will support her 100%. But that race has me worried. I don't know how to put the effort in there. Not right now. Aside from just simply saying, please go convince your working class neighbors to understand that they have another choice. Tell your medical staff that they actually have a nurse in the race. That's going to be a heavier lift. No bones about it. This right here. This polling bears out exactly what I was saying for months. I don't like being right just too early, but it fucking happened again. People can listen to me or they cannot listen to me. Like I said, I'm just a guy talking on the internet. Fuck do I know? But I called this. I said, ain't nobody beating AI. I've said it multiple times. Nobody's beating AI. Not right now. She can have terrible approval ratings and still nobody's beating her, because there is not a candidate available to us that can truly compete. John Kuiper was that candidate. John Kuiper made a choice to run third party. He's doing what he can to get on the ballot. And he even said in the article that I was literally quoted in with the Concord Monitor, that he said it's not always about winning, it's about just changing the landscape, which I agree with. I think that's accurate, but that does not materialize a win. That does not mean that the person who sits in that corner office changes. Right? And Warmington doesn't have the juice right now. I'm doing everything that I can to get her to come onto my program for an interview and examine this. I really am. And I don't know if that's going to materialize or not. I want it to. I would hope that interview being out there in the ether would mean that there's a test, a comparison that people can look at and understand and maybe refresh their attitudes towards her. But that requires her being willing to address some stuff that she really doesn't want to talk about publicly. So this is a bid to her campaign staff. I know that she's got a campaign manager that is DSA. I want to hear from you guys. I want you to be willing to come on and have a reasonable conversation. Please. Because that right there, that ain't a win. It just isn't. Sure, you might be able to pull that 18% unsure into your camp, but that's a lot of baggage to overcome. I don't know that you're getting it. I don't know that you're going to get all those 18 points. I just don't think so. I think that's a bad bet. I don't think you're going to be able to siphon that vote off of AI. I don't think you're touching that 45% right now. Not the way things are. You got to be a lot more bold. You're going to have to really, really set yourself apart from the institution of the NHDP if you want to actually fight that number. If you genuinely want to pull away from the 45 points that AI holds, you want to really cut into that 18% unsure. That's super real. That is so real. I'm sorry. I don't enjoy being the bad news guy, but here we are. Okay. Swapping over. Now we're going to talk about Senate. This is bonkers. Right here. The fact that Karishma has managed to jump up to 28% is crazy. Neutral only 12%. Unfavorable only 6%, compared to Pappas is 20% unfavorable. 20%. I want to point out that 28 to 52 is a really big gap. That's a really big gap. But the gains Karishma has been making are not nothing. That is serious shit. That is serious shit. And I think as Pappas stumbles, more and more and more people are starting to wake up to how badly he represents them. I think you're going to see that unfavorable number increase. And we are talking about likely Democratic primary voters. That's a playable number right there. There's a lot of work that the Mansour campaign needs to do right here. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. There is a lot of goddamn work you guys need to do. I don't think it's out of reach. But you got to be concerted, dude. You got to be really, really strategic. Door knocking, phone banking, 100%. I'm seeing signs out. The signs are good. The signs help, but they aren't a win. Road signs do not equal wins. People in New Hampshire love their fucking road signs. I think they're obnoxious, and so do a lot of other people. They do help a little bit to give the illusion of support for candidates, for sure, but it entirely depends. A sign on somebody's lawn means so much more than a random sign plugged into the side of a highway, right? Because the sign on the highway it just says, I'm billboarding. The sign on a lawn says, I'm voting. Those are two very different things. If you've got a plethora of signs on lawns, that's more of a demonstration of support than a bunch of signs on a highway. But again, it comes back to door knocking, and it comes back to phone banking. And when your money is so spread thin because gas is fucking insane, because we decided to have this stupid ass war with Iran, and you can't afford to hire enough people to go out and do the door knocking, and you have to pay for the gas for them to get everywhere, right? Phones are going to be where you win. And I get that it's fucking expensive to get access to those numbers. I totally understand. But that's the way you do it. This is where the organizers need to come in clutch. You need to be sharing your resources. You need to be engaging, right? Grassroots efforts, this is how they work. This is where it comes from. So I could say a lot more about this stuff, but honestly, like, we're already at 30 minutes for this video. And I don't think that it's productive necessarily for me to make it any longer and break all this stuff down further right now. It's a lot of time spent talking about this one particular situation with these polls. And I am very curious to see what happens if UNH decides to push out a CD1 poll. I know that they have taken the data. It's just about whether or not they put it out. I don't like that it's so trickly right now. I would really hope that we see another poll released in August, like end of August, maybe right before the election. I would anticipate that's something that's quite possible. And it's very important to see that support come in from the grassroots in terms of the true, phone banking and door knocking. And then it's also important to see support come in nationally to boost candidates and hopefully bring some money from, individual donors from out of the state, people that just want to see the Congress in DC go further to the left, to be much more representative of their beliefs and their values. It's where we're at, dude. Hard pills to swallow, but here we are. Good luck, folks. I've told you what I think. Figure out what you want to do with it.